Howdy. In this segment I want to talk about what I call today's economics, which really isn't economics at all, but it's kind of overpowering normal economics, which has more to do with businesses and stuff. But this has more to do with just flat out amount of money out there. A couple quick comments before I get started is that I'm not giving any investment advice in this segment, or am I selling anything. All I'm doing is just looking at the big picture again of what's going on out there and giving my opinion. So I'm going to be on autopilot here for a minute because I've done this with lots of different folks over the years, but I want to start with a newspaper article that was in the paper 6-7 years ago about a country in Africa called Zimbabwe. And what it said kind of caught me. It says a loaf of bread cost $200,000 before the devaluation. And when I show that to people, everybody scratches their head and I say, well, does that make any sense at all? And they say, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I said, well, okay, but after that, this country in Africa came out with a $5 billion bill, and then a $50 trillion bill, and then a somewhat now minorly famous $100 trillion bill. And after that, the money went poof completely. And then I asked folks, well, is that a good situation if you want to go buy things and stuff and the money doesn't work? Everybody agrees that's not a good situation, so we certainly don't want to go there. So the next question I've got then is, well, do we have that problem here in the United States? And people generally agree, well, no, we don't have that problem. I said, well, we don't have that problem, but we got a little bit of that problem. So that's what we're going to look at here in the next few minutes, and that's kind of what this segment is about, and see where maybe where we're headed to or how it works. So the first question I ask people is, what does it cost to mail a letter? And because of electronics and emails and everything these days, a lot of younger folks especially don't know. But if you go to the post office and want to buy a stamp, it's 49 cents. And you can get a forever stamp. Nowadays they're common, but if you want to just add up old stamps too, those are still valid. So here's a 20 and a 20 and a 6 and a 3. Which if I lick those and put them on an envelope and put them in a mailbox, they'll deliver them. Okay. So the next question is, what did that cost when I was a kid? Well, I got that too. This says 1952, and it's a 3-cent stamp. So back then, if I licked a 3-cent stamp, put on an envelope and addressed it and put it in a mailbox, they'd deliver it. And now it has to be 49 cents. So even in the United States here, something's going on, but it's not quite clear what, so let's dig a little deeper. I've got a couple books here that I show folks about learning how to play chess. One of them I bought about a year ago, and it was $7.99 or $8. And the other one I bought when I was in college, and it was $1.95. And I have them compare pages in the middle, and they agree it's the same book. So when I was in college it was $2, and what I just bought was $8 for the same book. So that kind of tells us something's going on. How about a Saturday matinee movie? My mom used to tell us, now my mom, of course, being a generation older than me, used to tell us she'd go to, as a girl, so that was a long time ago, that she'd go to a Saturday matinee movie. We don't even use that word much anymore, but it meant lunchtime movie. I asked folks what it costs today, and you know, everybody agrees it's somewhat more, somewhat less maybe, but basically probably somewhere around a $5 bill. And I say, well, my mom used to tell us when we were kids that she used to go to a Saturday matinee movie for a nickel, for 5 cents. So now we got to really start thinking here for a second. What happens if we take a nickel, 5 cents, and we add a zero to it? Well, that's 50 cents. What if we add another zero to it? Well, that's 500 or $5. So is that a little bit like what Zimbabwe was doing? They're just adding zeros to their money until it went poof completely? I think there's some similarities. So let's look at one more example and then we'll talk about what's going on and why and dig a little deeper. So let's talk about two different quarters. I got two different quarters here, a 64 quarter and a 65 quarter. The 1960, or both of those could have been in my pocket at the same time in 1965, and either one of them, maybe not quite, but pretty much could have bought a double stack burger, which is surprises folks for a quarter. But what even more surprising is that the 64, which is made out of silver, or anything before 64 quarters made out of silver, it still will buy you pretty much a double stack burger. If you go to a coin dealer, they'll give you whatever the current price of silver is, but $4, $5, $6, and you could take that down to the burger place and get a double stack burger. Now, what'll the 65 quarter, or same as today's, what'll that get you? Well, if you go to a burger shop with that, you get laughed at. So there's certainly something going on with that too. So if you try to think about this in the way the news media talks or your friends talk or something, they talk about inflation. The word inflation means kind of like blowing up a balloon or something and the prices are going up, and you say, well, yeah, prices are going up. But it doesn't really tell you what's going on or why or what to look for. So let's flip that upside down and look at the effort or the value behind these things. What about the effort to make a movie? Is that really any different than when my mom used to go? I mean, you got to get actors and actors together, you got to make the film, you got to get the film to the theater, sell the tickets. The work's about the same now as it was when she went. What about the effort to make the book about chess? They got to cut down trees, get the paper, they got to get ink, they got to get the book to the bookstore and sell it. Is that effort any different than back when I was in college? I don't think so. What about the effort to deliver a letter? They got to collect the letters from the mailbox, they got to sort them out at their sorting place, they got to drive them out and deliver them. Is that effort any different than when I was a kid? I don't think so. So if the effort's the same, what's got to be changing is the value of our money that we carry around with us here in the United States has to be going down. Well, if the value of the money's changing, who controls that? Well, it's not a mystery, it says it right on top. So anybody that wants to think about it or pay attention, it says Federal Reserve note right on top. So why would the value of that be going down? Well, it turns out that, you know, depending on the month or the year, but they're printing hundreds of billions of dollars, or printing or creating nowadays digitally in computers, hundreds of billions every year, and basically watering down the value of any money that people have out here already. So a lot of 10-year-old kids and stuff that I work with are smart enough to, because I say, well, what happens if we go to a copy machine and copy money? And they all know, well, we get in trouble and go to jail. So they ask me, well, how come they get to do it and I can't? So that's the first real head scratcher here, is to, what am I supposed to tell them? Because there's something, something isn't going quite right. So philosophically, why is the Federal Reserve allowed to create all these new dollars? Well, it's because the government's allowing them to, because the government is spending, the federal government is spending, you know, $500 billion roughly every year that they don't have and putting it on a credit card. And the Constitution doesn't let them just print it, because long ago when there were just more, the states were more powerful and stuff, were actually creating their own money, they kept getting in trouble. So the Constitution says anything the federal government can do is issue bonds for debt. But now the Federal Reserve is creating dollars and buying that debt, then that's really not much different than if the federal government was just creating the money themselves. So we may, just in general, be getting ourselves into trouble here somewhat. Okay, so the question is, well, what if we didn't do that with the Federal Reserve and we just went to standard money? Is there any precedent for that, anything? And it turns out there is. For 100 years, the United States had something called U.S. notes, and that's what it said on the top of them, and that amount was fixed by the President and Congress, and that's, I think it was like $346 million or something. That's why a nickel was worth so much money. But it was just flat, and that requirement of how much money is out there in circulation was directly responsible to voters through their representatives. But nowadays, with the Federal Reserve, the federal government has taken that responsibility and outsourced it to the Federal Reserve, and I'm thinking that may be too powerful a thing to be outsourced, and that really needs to stay under the control of the voters. As far as the silver coin and stuff, I'm not going to get into that right now. Gold and silver, because they're hard to get out of the ground and stuff, have been money for 5,000 years, and you can study that yourself as far as whether that's something we'd want to go back to and lock into again. But one problem I've got here is that I took a friend of mine, we went down to the mall and asked 25 people what the Federal Reserve was, and 20 of them just stared at us. So the public is not paying attention at all to what's going on, to something which is pretty fundamental to them as far as money goes. Just a quick side note on that, of the 5 that did know something that had to do with money, 2 of them said something about the corner bank, which wasn't true. So that left 3 that did know about the Federal Reserve, and 2 of those 3 got mad at us and started saying, yeah, Federal Reserve. So if you figure it out, people do understand they don't like it, so in general, probably. I guess I've got 5 reasons that I wrote down that I'm concerned about the Federal Reserve. One is that I think it's immoral. We talked about that. It's got that morality question of how come they get to do it and we can't. If we go to a copy machine and copy money, we get in trouble, go to jail or whatever. I think it's possible, number 2, that it could lead to hyperinflation like what happened in Zimbabwe. That's always a danger if you're on that curve. Let's say that it doesn't. I think it's still a problem because, and I made up a bumper sticker here, it says Federal Reserve grows a dangerous federal government. By doing what they're doing, they're making the federal government bigger and bigger, and they're not buying the bonds of the states. They're not buying individuals' debt for our individual liberties or anything. They're just buying the federal government. So they're kind of maybe picking sides on this. Another thing is that to have more money, you know, and with the fractional reserve system of dollars the way it is, for banks to have more money and the money supply to grow, they have to have more debt. So that kind of is pretty questionable philosophically. That's not a good concept. And I think because they're doing this, one of the ways they're keeping this ability to do it is they're kind of keeping the public pacified, and where the public doesn't get at all riled up, and I'm not sure that's good either, because that's not, you're going down a generally not a very good path, then the public shouldn't be pacified. So I guess just one final comment. There is a lot of books about the Federal Reserve. One pretty famous is the Creature from Jekyll Island. If you want to dig into this deeper, that may be a good one. I've certainly got more to say about the big picture and a few more upcoming videos, but I guess that's the end for this one, and that's a look at today's economics. Thanks for watching.